Data science is dying. All right, not dying, okay, but it's evolving fast. The thing is, data science is changing faster than most data scientists. To figure out what that actually means in practice, I invited Suzanne El-Moursi. She's the CEO of Brighthive, a serial entrepreneur with a successful exit from Uplift Data Partners. She was named one of the top 50 women CEOs in 2025 and someone who's actually putting AI agents into real workflows. Why her? Well, because Suzanne has a simple but powerful recipe, her 3-layer cake. At the bottom, your usual stack. In the middle, the agents, and on top, clear rules and guardrails. What we are really talking about isn't more models, it's about making data useful every single day. Only 3% of people in your company are building pipelines, while 97% are making decisions. So the point is to give them the right context and the right levers to move faster and safer. And the role of the data scientist here, that's shifting too. Less routine grunt work, more flow design, more common sense, and more responsibility for managing the context that agents operate in. And what should you do personally? Think of it as a 6-month upgrade. First month, pick one painful process and break it down step by step. Next two, let agents handle the boring stuff on the guardrails and logging. And final two, measure the results, turn it into a short playbook and level up your prompt English, clear names, solid context, sharp constraints. My name is Leo Sushev. I'm a co-founder of MKDev, a DevOps and cloud consultancy where we help teams across industries innovate faster with cloud-native technologies, deep automation, and Gen AI-ready architecture. And this is DevOps Accent, the podcast where we dig into the real conversations about platforms, infrastructure, and AI-native development with the people actually building them. Let's go.
Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello, Suzanne. Thanks for coming. Thanks for joining me for this podcast. How you been doing?
I've been great. Hello, and thank you for having me. Hello from Chicago. Sunny, bright summer day.
Wonderful. So for our listeners, Suzanne leads Brighthive, a company pushing on agentic AI for data work. And I recently heard her describe a 3-layer cake. We will discuss this later, of a 3-layer cake of modern data, composable stacks at the bottom, agentic AI in the middle, and governance on top, keeping everything safe and trustworthy. It stuck with me, and it's stuck with a lot of people, as we discussed before the recording, because so many teams we meet at MKDev as well are wrestling with exactly those layers, the stock sprawl, the new AI assistants, and who approves what. Questions. So, but before we get there, let's start with your arc, Suzanne. How did you start? How did you came to where you currently are? And most importantly, giving the name of our podcast, DevOps Accent. What is your accent?
Right. So my accent is, so we'll start with I'm from Cairo, Egypt. I came to the United States in the mid-90s.
You made a long trip.
That's a long trip, right? I always say to get to the US figuratively, it's not easy. You figuratively have to cross one of the two oceans, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, truly though, I'm an immigrant into the United States. I'm a naturalized American today. I have Egyptian roots and American wings, which I believe are my moat, meaning that's what makes me special, and I'll explain. But I did come to the US in the mid-90s at the birth of the WWW, right? The @ which many people don't really remember the birth of the internet. So over 30 years, I've been very fortunate to have lived through, during my adult working years, basically, multiple technology eras. And when I came to the United States in the mid 90s, it was, a hungry immigrant that is looking to come to graduate school, right? Study. And my first master's is in computer science. I landed in Chicago. I went to DePaul University. So I'm a technologist
At heart.
from my at heart. 30 years doing this, right? I've lived through, Java, C++, just all of the languages. I mean, all the things that people today like, what is that language, right? That's not the language I'm using. Because it was a time where that what's with the internet, what was it doing for us? It was bringing us online, transforming us, giving something called a web browser. Data is locked up in Linux and mainframe. I was very fortunate to start my career at IBM Global Services. IBM, back in the day, Big Blue was a big deal, as they would say. And so that's my origination story, right? Is a immigrant hunger, coming to the United States to study and understand the world. Always been a technologist, lived through multiple eras of technology from the internet. Every single one of them, minus the personal computing, because I was just born. So I did not witness that one. But the birth of the internet, the mobile era, the data and apps. And so all throughout my life, and the cloud, of course, for everything going into the cloud, that era from a SaaS and software perspective. um, I'm familiar with the challenges of the singular thing that continues to be challenging, which is data. And so that's what I would say, kind of to where we are today, focusing on data and agentic analytics for data teams, and the idea that we do believe one of the most powerful ways we can apply AI is to solve the data problem. And the data problem for us is how difficult it is to work with data, which we'll get into. That's kind of where I am today, but it isn't something that I just woke up to. It's actually, I've been living it, being singularly a technologist for that long, and seeing the evolution of technology and what it changes and what it can do, but also where sometimes it's more difficult around the data.
From your experience, like given that you lived through the uh, I'm afraid to say this word, you lived through the era. So,
Eras, yes, all the eras, the eras tours. I'm not, we laugh because it's Taylor Swift. I'm not Swift or Swifty, but definitely I have my tour of all the eras. Yeah.
yeah, and do you think it was so your growth as a professional and your path that eventually led you to where you currently are? Do you think it was organic, or do you think you had shift, like sudden shifts, and where and the moments when you had to relearn, or maybe even um, rediscovering your passion to data? Because I can imagine we've been through different stages of how we operate data, and uh, you saw a lot of problems. And what problems did you keep seeing that made you build your current company, Brighthive, the way you did? So what led you to that?
It's really started in the 90s when, as I mentioned, I was at IBM Global Services, which is the technology consulting arm of IBM. Today, it's known as IBM Consulting. It's obviously different. But back then, we were technology consultants helping incredibly sizable, prominent brands, Bank of America, State Farm, I mean, big United States and global brands. It wasn't, we were not just in the United States, helping them adopt the internet, right? And transforming their businesses with this channel. For example, in insurance, State Farm in the United States, one of the largest, top two, if not the largest insurance firm. How do you begin giving people a new way of applying for insurance for their home or for their auto? Right? So basically, digitizing the application. If you think about that, right? In every state in the U.S., it's different laws. That is all about data, right? Because you're moving from filling out an application by hand, you're moving into a world where you're collecting data digitally, and then from there, it's different kind of process and a different data workflow from where data was in the 90s. It just was locked up in a lot of mainframe Linux environments, and the tooling around how you even look at the quality of that data, its usability. And now we were collecting data in a different way, user generated. So it has all kinds of issues, right? The way my last name is El-Moursi, it has a hyphen. Some systems would allow me to enter the hyphens recently. Most of the time, I could never put a hyphen, right? And it would always error out. So my story is that from the very beginning, I had a front row seat in because I worked for 16 years in big corporate, big enterprises. I worked, at GE Healthcare. I worked at HSBC. I mean, IBM was my starting point, but it continued to get bigger and bigger as I was exposed to more and more corporate settings where technology was the backbone, and enterprise level data lives everywhere in the enterprise. It is very fragmented, it is siloed. Governance is almost impossible, it's not really there. And when you try to roll out new tools and new technology, like we went into the world then of apps. The app store, Apple gives us the smartphone in 2003, and the whole iPad, right, the whole mobile evolution. And then the apps that get the whole idea that everything could be an app. Like, how do you now start creating and looking at data for even more miniaturized UI, and then also you're consuming it in a very what is an app and what can go on an app. Like, so then which data is the most prominent, which data is the best, which data is available and usable, security, privacy as well. So you see what's happening is that you're trying to meet the moment, as a technologist, in creating solutions that solve problems for people or are delightful. And along the journey of trying to create delight, whether it's a new website, it's a new app, it's a new technology, it's a custom made thing, it's not just about the user interface, right? I'm a technologist, it's not only coding the front end and the back end. In the middle is where what is happening, right? What is the data that's being presented? What is the data that's being taken in? What is the process by which we validate and make sense of that data? Of course, as UIs started to get more and more popular, you're talking also about visualization. And that's a lot of what is really beautiful about data science, is how do you look at the data and look for signals, and how do you look for the story inside the data? Data on its own, I mean, I always say companies are data rich and insights poor. That is why BrightHive is very personal to me, because we're on a mission to help people transform the way that they work, because we give them a very powerful tool that helps them be much more informed. We're transforming work, knowledge work, to be data informed work. How does that happen when working with data is so difficult, right? And how do you help them find the story in the data? So previously, it's been hard to do that on your own as an individual, whether you were in the marketing, function, or in the strategy, whatever, even when you're a data scientist, because much of data work is grunt work, right? It's dirty. It needs to be cleansed. It needs to be governed, and it's siloed, right? And these things are very difficult for non-technical people.
Exactly. From the marketing standpoint, by point of view, yeah, I can relate 100%. That you have to dig yourself, like you have to force yourself into data.
Exactly. And the rise of SaaS added to this. It's a double-edged sword, right? The rise of SaaS technology, software as a service, all these platforms, and also the rise of the modern data stack is also a double-edged sword. They're both a blessing, but a curse at the same time. Because as more software is being born, right? As Salesforce and below, like any platform for anything, Funnel.io for marketing agencies. I mean, there's just so much software in the world, and I've always been a software person, right? The more software that you have, the more fragmentation is happening as well, right? The interoperability between software is not always at all sometimes there. Additionally, the rise of the modern data stack in the last decade and a half, right? There's a tool for every component of the modern data stack. So, data engineers and data scientists are now tasked with just a lot of tools on the market, right? When it comes to what you use for an ETL, what's the warehousing, just very specific things. So therefore, it is a very much complicated stack, right? That you're learning to be able to move and work with data. There was a study that I read the other day in Coca-Cola for the bottling business of Coca-Cola, and there's 17 different distributors that bottle the Coke, right? And they produce 1.4 billion bottles of Coke annually for Coca-Cola company. These are all just bottlers. So just that is what they provide. And for them to be able to work with their data to create certain reports, data has to, on average, be moved 11 times. You're moving the data sets 11 times across different destinations just to be able to analyze it and tell a story. So you see, this is not a new problem. Like the reason it is that difficult is because throughout time, technology is evolving, but the working with data problem is not improving, right? And more data is being produced. In the last 2 years since the rise of AI, from demand surge, I read the statistic that 90% of the world's data was produced just in the last 2 years. See, every new technology era drives an explosion of data, creation, and it's upside down. We're creating more platforms that are very capable, very powerful, but we're also adding to the debt, right, of what it takes to work and organize and have clean data assets to fuel. So today, artificial intelligence needs clean data to it's artificial until it's not, until it learns. And that's what interests me about data, because I've seen it for 30 years be absolutely a pain point, and I've seen how with every era it doesn't necessarily get better, and we're still as human beings challenged by it. And the idea that we can improve the on ramp of working with data and perhaps even flatten it one day, I think that's what gets us really excited.
At this point, would you even consider yourself as a data scientist or a data researcher? How would you even call yourself?
um, no, it's funny because people think that's strange that I say no to that question. The reason for that for me is I'm not, I'm much more macro in looking at this problem than um, than micro. Meaning, I look at the data and the systems around it. I see the potential of data, but I'm also understanding. I'm much more excited by trying to figure out why it's locked up. I understand its nature. I understand the nature of data and what about it is difficult and what about it is exciting. But I am also more intrigued by the system that it lives in, and that's the people and the tools and the workflows. So the other part we're not talking about here enough, but spending 16 years working for big corporates or having clients in big corporates, because I also was a technology consultant for a while, you see that the workflows that are in big companies, which are completely, human made, right? These are just the processes by which work is done. I mean, that is a whole other area, right? And so if I'm just a data scientist, then I'm not really looking at the full picture, which requires that you look at the people, the process, and the tools and the data. And the problem that we are dealing with is equal parts from all four, right? Just the data alone is the thing that I'm focusing on. I'm trying to figure out and unlock essentially people are people, like retraining them to trust AI and think about AI and just adopting new tools. The workflows that are ancient have to get redefined, right? Have to get simplified. In the world, in the era of AI, absolutely. Agents need to understand workflow. And so we need to simplify complex workflows and really almost optimize them. And then tools, the systems, right? All of this software. I mean, there's a software for everything. And by the way, I'm a software person. So I believe that software can, for good, it can solve people's problems. And all of this is generating data. So I can't just be a data scientist, you know?
I think I have a nice analogy for what you're doing. If we picture data as a city, then you are not a builder, you are not an engineer. You're more like an urbanist who defines as a specialist in data planning, who focuses on the development and implementation of livable data, right? Like urbanist defines livable spaces, livable cities. So you do the same for data.
Yeah. The world that I see, and up until this point, you couldn't. People would laugh that that's never going to be the world that actually is realistic. But the world that I see is that I have data. We all do. By the way, not only do you have data, but people have data on you. So an I is whatever.
A whole different story.
I mean, that's a whole other podcast. But I could be a company, an enterprise. I could be it could be a middle market, smaller company, medium-sized company. It could be the individual. It could be a nonprofit, right? It could be a government. I have data. And and it's a very important asset, right? It's the most important asset. It's like gold or the new oil. People, when they said, oh, like data is the new oil, like truly. But as you know, gold or oil, you've got to mine it. You have got to extract it for it to create value, right? And so I see a world where we can mine and we should be able to mine easier, right? With more proficiency and more governance and kind of more security. We should be able to mine this asset much more um, intentionally and more value add ways than any time in history. Because for so long we didn't always mine it. We just didn't touch it. We've become accepting of the fact that data is tough. Data work is tough. It's dirty. It's fragmented. It's much of a data scientist's job. 80% of a data scientist's job is grunt work. They don't want to do that. They want to be building the interesting models. They want to be trying to think about the future and looking at data differently. They want to be innovating around data. But if you don't have it in a clean state to be able to do that, what are you doing? You're like a mine worker, right? Extracting it from the ground. So the world that I see is that 80% of grunt work that is what a data scientist spends doing. You ask for a report, it takes them 4 or 5 weeks to return it. But that's not because the ask is complex. It's because what they have to do to get to the answers that you're asking as a manager or as a leader, it requires that much mining. And so the tooling in this era, which is agentic AI, just like a miner would have tools to extract from the ground, right? The tooling is what gets us excited because we're saying we believe in a world where mining insights from data is going to be a lot different. It's going to be more pleasant. It's going to be more empowering for people, right? And it's going to make people actually upskilled. We don't see a reason to be afraid of driving agentic data workflow, because if we can look at this moment as a way to upskill people, then you're really just using best in class tools to do your work very differently. And that's very exciting for us.
We use a lot of wheel when we speak about how we are going to use that, how we're going to extract data, because the the scene that where we currently are has shifted, changed. Like 2024 made AI everywhere. All right, so no, it's wrong. We thought that 2024 made AI everywhere, but we have no idea. 2025 is already so. If we even take most recent examples where we can write apps as we go, so we don't need. So soon we won't be needing traditional applications, right? So if we need something, we can generate this app. This already changed, and AI will be everywhere. It's not everywhere just yet, but job titles, they lack reality, really lack. Like listeners keep asking what actually changes for me. I myself ask myself what changed for me. And at MKDev, we've been collecting stories from our clients, from our friends. They talk about dashboards. Nobody opens SaaS products that never ship, and now AI agent that can stitch data together without traditional ML ops pipeline. A recent industry piece that I read argued that in agentic systems, context beats training. Giving an AI the right governed context often matters more than fine-tuning another model. That maps to what we see, to what we saw recently. The most valuable people aren't just modelers. They are how to put it, they are more like sense makers who can turn messy org knowledge into safe, usable context for agents. So, Suzanne, I guess my question to you is, when you look at teams adopting agent-style workflows, what parts of the classic data scientist job fade? Like you're introducing something new, killing at the same time something old. How do you see that? How do you see that data scientist jobs fading?
Perhaps redefining something old, right?
Okay.
So you're absolutely right. You said a few things that I just want to double click on all of that. Number one, that's exactly why I'm not just a data scientist, as you said. You consider yourself a still traditional scientist, data scientist. The reason is, I also said one of the things is the workflows, and these workflows were created by people. And the third, and I will kind of stitch this all together. And the third thing you said is about the context is king. And I mentioned, artificial intelligence. It's artificial until it's not. It doesn't know. It needs to be educated and informed. This intelligence that we're talking about, it's a function of how you you know, feed what you feed it and how you educate it. And so for those reasons, from the very first point, yeah, you can't just be a data scientist. That's how it changes for you. You have to understand the process and the workflows inside these companies, because these agents that we're saying are going to work alongside you, and it's no longer they will. The evolution and adopting of technology will be where companies are just going to have agentic workforce. It would make business sense to have agentic workforce alongside human. So then how do they coexist? Well, the workflows, point number two, the workflows inside companies, large or small, whatever, and in the middle, any organization, these workflows are defined by people, right? The process, for example, to approve a reimbursement, expense reimbursement, the process by which someone requests a laptop. Like, I'm using very simple workflow here, but much more complicated workflows when you think about how, you know, um, how work happens inside companies. Well, that is all defined by people. And it says, you're going to go from this system to this system, and this data report has to go to the. We defined that, right? Agents didn't define that. They didn't even exist in the workforce. So all of these workflows that are inside companies, inside departments, marketing departments, supply chain, customer success, finance, rev ops, sales, every single function in a company has workflows by which work happens and by which how the function functions. All of this is what the human beings will always own, right? And the optimizations of workflows is necessary. And you're helping. That's what's going to give context to the agent, right? On its own, the agent is unable to know. It does not know that. Therefore, the human capacity to be able to say, I used to do this previously and it took me 16 steps. This is just the way that we designed this workflow in the 90s. Okay. It doesn't work in the year 2027, right? It can be simpler. It's almost like saying you're going from completely analog, right, to dial up or digital again, in a way, because now it's not about the connectivity that's coming online, but it's about what about the old way of doing business. And this is why I say we're redefining, perhaps, what of this context inside the company. And the bigger the company, the more complicated, right? What is it from the fabric that makes McDonald's, right? Or makes Coca-Cola, the workflows? What of that am I going to extract and actually feed into the third component, which is the artificial intelligence? So you see the process. It needs human decision making around simplifying the complex workflows and the way work is done, and being able to extract what's most valuable that we want the agents to optimize for us and learn and make and actually complete that work for us faster. Which means what am I left with as a human being? I'm liberated from the grunt work, right? Most of the time we are doing tasks, human beings are doing tasks that are not the most innovative, that are not the most exciting, that are not most fun, and that are not really tapping into the creative genius of humanity. I believe the human mind is much more capable and creative than we understand. But when our jobs have so much more tactical, boring, but it's part of the job, as we say in America, it's part of the job. our days are consumed by doing that, right? We're not necessarily liberated to use our complex creative human brain to do new innovative things. And therefore, the how will it change for me? Well, when we liberate you and your day to day from a lot of the mundane that just comes with the job, and you tool the agents and you teach the agents the context from the workflows of what should be done and how, and it does it on autopilot, that mundane grunt work, what happens to the human being? You're liberated to start looking at the world and have jobs that really reflect new innovative skills.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.
Here comes a tougher one. From what you're saying, it looks like that context and data evaluation will become the new bottleneck for the organizations, especially for big organizations. So the question is, who owns it? Who is the person to decide that? And how do they do that? How to do that? This is good enough to continue and even without killing speed. So who does that, and how can they decide that the data and the context is good for them to start?
Yeah. Do you know that in the United States, at least, I'm not so certain for Europe, but I'm sure the metric wouldn't be much different. From the National Science Bureau, NSB here, the average percentage of data engineers in the full-time in an organization from a full-time staff, the percentage of the staff that is actually technical in the space that we're talking about on average, where it's been always,
I have no idea.
it's never been over 2.5%, 3%. So 97% of the full-time workers on the payroll of a company, 97% are who? They're the business, right? They're the people that are working alongside the data scientists. They're the data consumers, is what we call them at Brighthive, right? They are 97% of an organization is the data consumers. They're the ones that are, driving the business, whether it's in healthcare, whether it is in insurance, whether it's in finance, right? The business, 97%. Those are the data consumers. Those are the ones that are responsible for all of this, because the 3%, the 2 to 3%, and by the way, that's if you can find data scientists. As you know, this trade is sparse. There's more demand than there's supply. That's why that number is low. And so you're overburdened by a lot of requests from the business for the dashboards that nobody trusts, for the dashboards that are never updated, for the reports that are always collecting dust. So you see, the value creation is not optimized for. And that 97% that is in those organizations, who are very, by the way, very smart people, that are just not in the data science space, but they have years of experience on the industry, on the business, right? On the actually the exact company that they're in, on the market, right? Those are the people that we are speaking about to be equipped to help bring the context, right? And optimize the context in the workflows in these large companies and medium companies. Now, we didn't even get talking about small companies who don't even have these resources, right? They have a lot of data, but they don't necessarily have a data scientist on staff. So it is the answer to your question on the who helps with that rewiring and the optimization of context inside the workflows of businesses. It's the 97% that are the data consumers. They're data consumers in that they want the insights out of the data. They don't just want the raw data. They've been sitting on raw data forever. Everybody's data rich and insights poor, but they're waiting in line, right? In the queue, if you will, for somebody to pick up their project and help them create a report or a dashboard or analyze this data to give them the insights so that they can run with that insight and do something else, whether it is setting a strategy, whether it's changing a specific protocol, right? Business users and business leaders need evidence-based insight from the data sets that the private data sets that the company have, so that we can actually compete differently. And that's the point that I think gets missed in just the AI hype. Is this is a way, if you, at the end of the day, it's to drive business growth, to improve humanity, to educate, to upskill, right? So in the end of the day, it is driving the next wave of what's going to happen. And in a context of a for-profit business, it's how to compete, how to understand its market, how to understand the competition, how to understand its customers. In the context of in a private sector, you're doing this because you're trying to uh, grow, right? And nobody's just going to maintain their position. They're trying to compete, and so the competition is going to look differently. And therefore, you can't have this conversation without recognizing that the business users, who are the data consumers, are the ones that are going to be partners in this evolution, right? Of rewiring the company and essentially looking at the market altogether differently, all for the context of the workflows.
Do we need to retrain them, or is there a better way to make it work? Because, like, imagine 97% you have to organize this amount of people and make them do what you actually need for, in case of data collecting, context collecting and analyzing, and to make it work better. Do you need to organize and retrain them in order to make it work, or is there a better way?
I think the only way, the right way, is the upskilling and retraining. And that's what Brighthive's mission is. It is to, we are not a tool for data users. I mean, you have enough tools. And by the way, it's very crowded. I mean, again, we are just in our technology bubble, all of us. The mass market, the mass, humanity, people that are nurses and people that are working in operations, like these, they're not interested in a very techy UI, right? So our philosophy is that for our mission to be true, we are transforming knowledge work to be data informed work, is to say that we're giving BrightAgent, which is our product, to every business user so that we can upskill them to adopt AI and essentially adopt an entire data team, which is what our agent, BrightAgent, is essentially a supervisor agent that that's what you engage with as the user, and it's powered by multiple agents underneath it that are not wrappers on LLMs. They're actually engineered agents that do the full data lifecycle: the ingestion, the governance, the engineering, the visualization, the retrieval, even a builder agent that you can create any other custom agent to do a specific task. Like, for example, if you run a monthly report. So BrightAgent is a package of all of these agents that run the entire data lifecycle, and we're giving that to the 97%, so that wherever they sit in the organization, whatever work they do, they can just get on the BrightHive platform, use BrightAgent to analyze whatever question they have, create whatever visualization. That is the process of upskilling.
Yeah, so let's discuss this further, because from our personal experience, we watched the market reward people who could bridge disciplines, from folk who can translate business goals into data sets, policies into guardrails, and ambiguous questions into agent tasks. And I keep like a personal list from client calls: the people who thrive share three habits. So they create knowledge like librarians. They instrument their work so other can trust it, and they narrate decision clearly for humans and machines. And but if you were mentoring me or someone, okay, so not me, someone from your clients for the next 6 months, what would you put in their personal curriculum? What skills, like three capabilities to practice weekly? So because we need to retrain, we need to upskill ourselves. Let's try to give our listeners like the personal advices so they could be in front of the curve, right?
Number one, and even not because I am a technologist in my blood, just You can leave obviously I'm biased because I'm more technically aware, right? And more technically fluent. But if we were to put this aside, what I tell, even some good friends of mine who are lawyers and physicians who have nothing to do with technology, they're technology users, but that's not their job, right? That's not their career path. The very first thing is at rewiring your brain to think before you start any task, what's the most efficient way for me to do this? We get up and we do. We don't think. The first rewiring that has to happen is you need to lean in and think about what you're about to do. Because what we're saying here in the year 2025, work is changing. The way we are going to work is changing. Even forget even work. The way you're going to search for something, you just speak it into ChatGPT. Like the way we are engaging with technology has changed because there's a new thing to engage with. So you can't start from the same starting point, right? You can't start from the same starting point when that change has happened. And that is, we get up and we're creatures of habits as human beings, right? We get up and we do the same thing. So the very first thing is whatever your job is, like tactically, or your responsibilities are, you got to allow yourself to think about that question. What's the most efficient way for me to do that? We see it today. We see Cursor for the software. They're still coding, but the question is they're vibe coding, right? They're using Cursor. 60% of code is created there. Think about that.
I've heard that the most popular programming language in California now is English.
So you bring me to my next point. So first of all, think about what's the most efficient way, because if you don't do that, like that is the transformation that's happening. If we see for software, that is what's happening, is that people are using AI tools to generate the same code that 30 years ago we were all coders. Like I coded. I've done every role in the technology lifecycle, in the software development lifecycle. I've been an analyst, a test analyst. I've been a test script writer. I've coded all of it pretty much, um, and therefore I'm very aware that by definition we're coming from a very inefficient way of existing. But at the time it was very great because it met the moment of that technology. This technology moment is about efficiency and velocity. Work has to have velocity. The way that you work needs to have velocity. Therefore, smart human beings should answer the question, what's the most efficient way that I can do this task that I've always done? Do you have velocity in the way that you work? Secondly, prompt engineering is the new English, right? It really is. It's the bridge, it's kind of the blending of both. Our children, I have 3 children, and I just imagine them. We had to learn the user interface, the GUI, right? They are what's gonna be natural to them. I mean, there will be, like, "What's GUI, mom?" What's gonna be for them is prompt engineering, right? Because that is the mechanism, that's the glue between us and this, intelligence that we're talking about. That's the interaction medium. And that still allows for human genius to exist, right? Because all of this prompting, we call it prompting, the wording, the style, the grammar, gosh, that is, I'm so excited for how that world's gonna evolve, right? Is that gonna be a world, where it is, we say alphanumeric. It's like we're gonna laugh at that. What is prompt engineering? And that's the new English. That's the new English. So understanding that and recognizing that the way you write something has so much weight into what you're going to get out of AI, whatever it is, whatever agent.
Yeah. It's because of the way language models are working.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to learn the skill of communicating with language models and putting our prompts. And everybody who uses ChatGPT on a daily basis, they probably already found themselves in a weird position where they have to think and then think again on how to ask ChatGPT a question in order for them to give you a proper result. And it's a new skill.
Right. See what's happening? That's why I said to you, it's a rebirth. We're writing again.
Yeah.
We're thinking again.
Yeah.
The basics of humanity, right? What did I tell you? I tell people think is the way I'm about to do my job has the most velocity and the most efficient. And we're writing again. We're writing and we're thinking about what we're writing and how we're writing, because it is the doorway towards this new world. And that is just incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and it's interesting because instead of clicking icons button in the interface, we now, yeah, we now is communicating. Yeah,
Exactly. The
cool.
GUI is like, I literally had to tell my daughter the other day, because she's 11 and she started this summer putting her through coding school. So she's learned Python, CSS, and HTML. And she's a sailor, so she built a sailing website for herself.
Cool.
She spent all summer sailing, and she's 11. And I just I'm seeing this unfold in front of me, and I'm like, wow, your future is so great. Like, you guys, I'm so excited for our young people and for our children, because look what they're going to have to think, and they're going to write differently. And now we are writing with the machine, for that. We're using, this is a human trait to think and write well, right? So it's exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we have a whole another level with agentic AI. But I have a personal, like a personal fear, right? It's like letting your mom into your room without making it tidy. So, and I need to organize. So she wants to find something. She wants to help me, but she enters there and there's a mess. There is no way she can dig through all the piles of my stuff. So my question is, how do I what a personal portfolio prove that I am agentic ready? If I'm launch agent on my machine, what can I do to make it work most efficient? I don't know, like design documents, data playbooks, evaluation notebooks, or kind of checklist. What do I need? Anything? And if so, what would it be?
Good question. I don't know that the things that you will need will be the same things through time. I think they will always be changing. Your toolbox is going to change all the time. Um, I think that when we look into the future a little bit, I don't know how many years that is. It really could be months at this point, because things are happening so quickly in innovation. There's a company that I learned of in the spring called Delphi, DELPHI, Delphi. And they're basically applying AI to create the artificial brain. So, of your loved one, for example, of your grandmother. And the idea is each one of us should have an artificial brain. So maybe that's the most intriguing answer to your question, is on a 1.0 level, agents are creating everything. They're creating pictures, like AI now is creating, pictures, GIFs, PowerPoint presentations for you. It's writing anything that you want. It's creating code, right? It's productivity of the things that we did in our day-to-day work is faster than us, but also with more variety, because you could just ask it to reword something, rewrite a paragraph, optimize it, changing colors, all of that happens. And we don't want knowledge to be lost. So you're still adopting tools, but what I found interesting about this company is, in a way, the founder, and he's Iranian, so he was talking about his grandfather, in Iran, prominent businessman. He never, he wants to kind of make his father's or grandfather's kind of knowledge and wisdom live on. And so his whole point here is that as we're adopting all of this new technology that is very powerful, we can use it to not lose knowledge as people move on, and they move to the afterlife, or wherever we're supposed to go. And that, as part of adopting all these tools, is actually as a way for us to put a time capsule and be able to get the knowledge. And because the 1.0 tools that we're talking about, those are going to continue to change as the technology gets more advanced. Like, what's the next level of all of the LLMs? What's the next level of all the apps that are, Midjourney or whatever you use to create a picture, or create a PowerPoint, or create a document? You're just going to continue to use whatever version or generation that comes out. But in the evolution of that, what are you doing what is the thing that is not necessarily being diluted? And it's your knowledge, right? The knowledge that we have individually that is the thing that you should probably, if you can capture that and find ways to distill your knowledge, your experience, your individuality in an agentic way, that's gonna say a lot about your ability to be fearless in meeting the new world. Because at the end of the day, a doctor with AI is going to be displacing the doctor that hasn't touched any AI tools. And I say doctor for a specific reason. I was in an event last November, and on the panel was the chief technology officer of the Mayo Clinic. And we know Mayo Clinic is a gold standard when it comes to medicine here in the United States. And he gets a lot of questions from physicians who are against Mayo Clinic's AI adoption strategy, because they feel very personal that medicine is about humanity and none of this should be there, right? Shouldn't be part of it. And also that they've spent so many years of their life becoming a physician, right? And he said it best on that stage. He said, I meet with every physician and groups of physicians who reject this, and I tell them, AI isn't going to be replace the physician. It's the physician with AI that's going to replace one without. Because the point here is to actually help you be much good at the human part of medicine, right? Being able to actually do that and changing the context of how we think and what we're afraid of, 100% is required, right? Every trait is going
Yeah,
to be.
absolutely. Yeah, that is on a personal level. But let's get back to our businesses, and we will find a way to evolve ourselves with the business. But the businesses, they need to find a way to to take advantage of this shift, of this change that's happening in the industry, in us. And I kind of loved your 3-layer cake metaphor. And I will put it into the description under the video for those who want to familiarize themselves with it. But here's how I picture it as a non-engineer. So those 3 layers, there is a base, some kind of composable stack, a toolbox you can rearrange, connectors, vector stories, catalogs, things like that. In the middle, there's agentic AI, a software teammate that can plan, call tools, and collaborate with me, with other humans in the team. And at the top, there's governors, let's say, call it a frosting, right? The layers that makes it edible. Lineage, access, approvals, audit, and now even new standards for AI governance that come from European Union government and other instances. So when we help a client rationalize their platform, and this is what we do at MKDev with our AI system inventory consulting service. So the gotcha is always at the interfaces where agents call tools that weren't designed with policy in mind. So my question to you, Suzanne, if a team wants to adopt that cake of 3 layers, but without daily aches, right, and other issues, what are the practical sequence? What is the practical sequence for them? And what do you see first, and what can safely come later?
That's a tough one. I mean, the short answer is you just start working with Brighthive. Clearly. I mean, that's the short, because that's the hard part. I mean, that's our work for the last 5 years, right? Is to do that, to have all those 3. The hardest part of the 3-layer cake is the governance, because data, contract as code, and being able to agentify and build policy and governance throughout this whole thing, everyone's governance posture is poor, and governance is hard. The agentic layer, I mean, that's not difficult. Anybody's figuring out the agentic capabilities. There's, that's for sure. The composable modern data stack, I mean, like I said, that's pretty much the last decade, right? With all the different tooling, We brought the best in class tools and we said, this is what makes the composable work faster and is right and good fit. And we've built the agents, the 7 that I mentioned that power BrightAgent. But throughout this entire place, what differentiates us is the access control and governance. We treat it as a code, right? Data contracts between you and me. My data is great. Your data is great. Together, we're powerful. How do I make you feel safe? How do we create trust so that you can share that data with me? And so policies are the hardest thing because it drives things on who can access what under what conditions. There are no controls in any UI that create this, right? Codification. And we're able to codify and enforce at runtime via agents, via using metadata from open metadata, contract specs from the ODCS. This lets you manage that whole complicated multi-tenant environment and being able to audit that access in real time. That's tough. And it's almost like the nervous system, right? It's the nervous system. It's in very minutia detail across the data work. So you can do the composable stack. People are creating agents in seconds. But the idea that agents work on data in a manner that's trustworthy, that's hard. And so I don't know that there's an easy way to do this. It was very, forward thinking from us. And we've been working at this before ChatGPT landed on your cell phone, really. And we were betting on this. But it's not we were betting on ChatGPT or and AI. AI has been around since the 60s. But it's the idea that we can create the 3-layer cake and and the world will be moving towards adopting AI to where our solution will stand out because it's giving you not just the AI, the agentic layer, but it's giving it to you with a base composable, architecture. And remember, I mentioned middle markets everywhere in the world. Middle market companies, they're data rich and insights poor because they're not always investing in their architecture with every technology innovation. So that's why when we're selling it to companies, we see they have a lot of very powerful data, but they don't have the architecture, the complete data architecture for us to actually have a good data foundation so that when the agents are in, right, you need that because the agents need clean data and they need good architecture to be able to learn. And then the governance is what gives the humanity the control, right, on what is accessed by who and enforcing that.
Yeah. Okay, so let's say we started doing that and we're following the passes, we're following the best practices, but what are the signals that the agentic proof of concept that we were working on is ready for regular workloads? What must be observable, testable, auditable, if it's even a word? Is it a word?
Yeah. Uh, Being able to look at people's work, being able to see, don't hide the controls. It comes down to those controls that you will know you're ready because you can answer anybody's resistance by showing them where in the architecture there is still control, right? People are afraid of just agents running loose, and that's not what we're just saying either. Being able to have ease of use, first of all, ease of use is huge. If you are rolling out any kind of new, AI or agentic, product, it has to be easy. It has to be delightful, which is one of the KPIs I talk about in all my podcasts. I love to see, we know we've arrived in our mission as Brighthive when people characterize that working with their data is delightful. And we made that possible because they're working with their data on our platform with our agent, with BrightAgent. So we can actually measure the delight of working with data. And which today, if you ask anybody, how do you like working with data? People cringe. It's not delightful.
Yeah.
It's exhausting,
Exactly.
right? So how do you know it's ready? Does it have great user experience that empowers the user? And does the user know that they can trust and have control? Those are the two things in how you in assessing it. It is not difficult to code and it is not difficult to build product. There's now in the era of AI, a new company being born every hour. It's becoming faster to build product. But therefore it's looser. Like the controls are loose. It's loose. And I think that just continues to add to the concern of people, like what's happening, what is this agent doing, what is it doing with my data, where is it pushing things out, like All of the considerations that people have to resist adoption isn't going to be because the technology isn't capable. It's 100% is, but that's what's creating the alarm. So how do you show that they have control? And then there's, which is the biggest mode for us, control, governance, and security, but also ease of use, because that's how you're going to get to the upskilling and reskilling that we talked about.
But other metrics, because okay, I'm still thinking with my DevOps concept, DevOps state of mind, because from our side, we have found observability and cost guards that must ship with version 1. Otherwise, pilots die in month or two. So is there something similar that you recommend teams ship on day one, like metrics or guardrails for them to keep up and take a good grasp and understanding what's going on, even and if it works as intended?
I don't want to underestimate, the ways that you will do evaluation, because we do, right? I think we are always actually inclined to over engineer the evaluation piece, and we're over engineering the process pieces and the measurability. I think you can there's a lot to measure. We even at Brighthive have evals on the individual agents, right? And BrightAgent, because our architect, we are saying we are agentifying the entire data lifecycle. So absolutely, you won't do anything new without knowing that some feedback loop, you're going to create some feedback loop at whatever points make sense. But what I'm cautioning of here is that don't overkill. Like, you don't need to have a feedback loop and a measurement in every single instance. I think that's also overkill, right? So it's going back to what's the mission of why you're rolling a new agent to this specific workflow, right? Are you measuring efficiency in time, or are you measuring efficiency in number of tickets closed, right? Are you measuring efficiency in speed of completion? So what's the metric that you're trying to change, and therefore you're using a different way to affect that metric? It does not have to be new metrics, is my point, right? Because it's not about different metrics. It's going back to, is what I'm doing the most efficient, the way that I'm solving this problem or doing this work, is it the most efficient way? And does it have improved velocity because I have better tools today with AI being all around us? So I don't necessarily, I think it's misleading to think that there's just new, more measurements that need to happen. I think it's an optimization of what you're already measuring and the scorecards that you have, right? How do they look different? And I'm all for this, by the way. I think we tend to overcomplicate things as human beings. A lot of times it's just really, let's dust off what you're already using and ask its relevancy to the moment, to this technology moment. Because most likely you have a lot more metrics than you need. But are you looking at the key ones that make a difference?
Cool. This is invaluable. I still have so many questions, and I'm sure our listeners too. But unfortunately, we run out of time. And for those who still want to learn more, where should people go to explore more of your thinking and practical guides? Destination number one is, of course, Brighthive. I will make sure to put all the
Yeah,
description and the links in
totally.
what other places?
I write on our blog, so definitely sign up, because I write, I tell my team the things that we should write about. Our newsletter on LinkedIn as well. I look at these channels not just about brand development of the company alone, but people today in this technology era that we're living through are even more keen to understand the people behind the companies and the thought process behind the why, right? Did we build this? The why did we build this, and why does the world need it? I approach building Brighthive and speaking to the market from that perspective. And you can see it probably in the way I answer the questions is, what's the why here, and why does the world need this, and why is this thinking better? And if you approach the things that you put out from the traditional marketing perspective, educate the market to capture it, because obviously we are selling. You have to speak to the logic of the people, right? Of the market, of the person that's listening to this podcast, reading a piece. And I believe that we're at a moment with AI that wasn't necessarily with the internet, where educating the market to capture it, so spending the time to educate, actually materializes to business, good business, because you're able to educate, convince, and kind of create excitement at the same time when you share, when you share your mind in this way, right? How do you see the world? What's different in the way that you want the world to be? How can we get to that different world, right? Product development engineering is not hard at all, especially when I've done it all my life. It's the easiest thing today. But building a business and building up a culture and building a brand around trust means that I'm feeling much bigger and more informed because of this interaction that we had today. So it allows me to have an open mind, right? As a user, as a customer, as a client. And when we open the minds in this way, which is educate the market to capture it, I think a lot of good comes out of that.
Thank you, Suzanne. This was great. I hope our listeners enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. So I think we will reserve another conversation for some time in the future. We will collect some questions and we will make a follow-up. So for those who listens to us, make sure to be subscribed to not to miss that. And we need our likes to support this conversation, to give us a way to understand if you enjoyed this, if you liked that, and put all your questions in the comments, or feel free to reach Suzanne directly on the links in the description. Thank you for coming, Suzanne. I have a great pleasure. And we will see you in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Thanks for having me.
There are no challenges that we couldn't overcome. Whether it is immediate infrastructure problems or planning a future project, we won't simply answer your questions. We become a part of your team to help you complete the mission. Our solutions consider the interests of your business and the combined expertise of the industry, as our staff is made up of more than a dozen experts in different areas who share decades of field-tested experience and knowledge with you.